Some important things to not do in the culture. When you're out in the market, one thing I actually had a pretty crazy experience. Markets are all open air. And so these people kind of come in and they spread their stuff out on the ground, and you just kind of walk along and buy what you want. And one thing I did, we were walking along a road, and I actually stepped over a woman's products. She had it was tomatoes and onions, and I stepped over her product to get to the other side, and she yelled at me and ripped into me so hard because of how inconsiderate that is. So watch doing that. I would highly recommend not doing that one. Another thing is watch how you use your hands. Culturally, this is how you call someone to you. You'd go like this towards them. Did you get that? Do this. I was in a district meeting and I went like this to someone, and that is a big no-no. It's like calling a prostitute, or it's very not good. So yeah, that's a good one. What else do they do? They have unique ways of calling a bus. You say, like on a bus, you yell loud so they know you're getting off, or you whistle, and that tells them you want to get off the bus. The people themselves are very friendly, especially if you're a foreigner. They love foreign people. You mostly get into people's house because you're foreign, and then they realize the importance of your message, and you either get to stay or don't. Unique things, I guess. You shake your hand like this. You grab your forearm and kind of bow a little bit to shake. When you're interrupting a conversation or walking between two people, you kind of do like a little hunch, and you say, azafrad, which means like I'm sorry or excuse me. You hunch, and you kind of like do a little crawl through people. Are there unique things as far as etiquette? It's very polite to use proper language. You'll learn a lot about like saying manawana tumku, which means tumku means Lord, but they use it as almost like sir. So you use that a lot with men and women. They don't really have a gender, back left or right, male or female, like French would or like we do. It's just all an implication in who you're talking about. You might use names. Eating etiquette. This is one thing that I still haven't lost. I mean, when you eat rice. Rice is difficult to eat with a fork. I mean, it's very hard to eat with a fork. So what you do is you use a spoon. So you use the spoon like you'd hold a spoon here, and then you use the fork to kind of like shovel it onto the spoon. So you got like a two-hander going on all the time. You'll get used. I had my favorite spoon. So I mean, that's how you use that. Any other food etiquette? Finish your food. It's important to remember a pace. They have a fuma fiteni, which means like a cliche or like a way of speaking. Let me see if I can say it right. Oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Which means that the wise will pretend to be full, but the crazy or the foolish will just stuff their faces. And what they're trying to say by that is these people, because they're poor, you have to be careful how much you eat of their food. If you eat too much too fast, they're going to bring you more food, which might have been the food that they were saving for the next day. So just control your pace. My biggest rule with eating was eat as fast as the host is eating. And then, when the host is done, you're done. And that way you're keeping a good relationship. Because, I mean, these members are sacrificing to feed you. So I was an extreme fan of their music. I mean, as a missionary, not supposed to listen to it too much, so I mostly do that now after being home. But I did amass a fairly good collection of what they like to listen to. They're trying to follow the major world trends, mostly pop, but they do have like their own classical style, which you'll experience. They have a very unique cultural form of music, which they combine with dancing. You'll see some of those cultural dances. Some other unique cultural things, they do a thing called the famadiana, which is involved in their ancestors. They will, I think it's once or twice a year, go to their family tombs, remove the bones of their family members, and have like a party with them. I mean, some things can seem a little ritualistic, and we're supposed to avoid those. But most of the time, it's just for remembrance, and those are usually a very, very long and fun procession they do for those things. I never got to go to one, but I'd always wanted to. All right, holidays are mostly religious. The island itself is extremely Christian. And depending where you are, there's some areas that are very Hindu, there's some areas that are very Muslim. And so I don't think there's a lot of Hindu, there's mostly Muslim. So you'll experience that, but on a large scale, it's very, very Catholic or Protestant. They celebrate Easter excessively. They do a lot of all-night church sessions. You'll hear them singing or praying all night long. I lived next to one of these churches at one point, and 2 or 3 in the morning they're over there singing, and that was nice. But they celebrate pretty much the main holidays we do. Christmas. They don't have anything unique to America. their Independence Day, I think it's July 24th. That's a fun day. You get really scared of that day because everybody breaks out their fireworks and they don't have any laws. So you have people throwing firecrackers, little things at you all the time. So those are fun times. The thing is, they don't have a whole lot of cultural history. I mean, their culture wasn't really a written culture as far as I know. I mean, I may not be not the biggest professional on the culture, but it wasn't written until, less than, I think, 200 years ago. I mean, maybe even less than 100. And so what they have is what they've got right now. I mean, they have a lot of influence from Africa because, I didn't mention earlier that Africa is kind of like their hub for everything. That's where their temple is, Johannesburg. And so, it's very influenced by that, by the French. Anything they do have is very handmade. I saw some very beautiful pieces of art. Instruments are all handmade. I knew a lot of missionaries that had guitars made. I have this that I carry with me, alligator skin wallet that, they crafted. So, they do all kinds of things. One of the very common things for missionaries to do over there is to bookbind. Bookbinders are everywhere. You can have anything bound for, less than $10. I have like I preach my gospel, all my scriptures. I bound a lot of things in different textures. You can have them bound in alligator. It's pretty unique. They're very mineral rich. There's a couple provinces that have lots of precious stones. So I knew missionaries that would buy some precious stones. I should have worn it. They have another unique cultural thing is a vangu vangu. It means bracelet or cult. It's a very proper thing to do. Every man has himself a vangu vangu. It's just a silver bracelet. I have one of those. Yeah.
Malagasy people are very humble. And I think that has something to do with the fact that they don't have a lot. So they're very humble for the most part. I never had anyone slam their door in my face or anything like that. And so they're very humble, very accepting of people. I think they're naturally a little skeptical of missionaries because we look different and we stand out. But overall, they're very willing to listen to what we have to say. And they're very giving as well. If you show up at a certain time, randomly show up to their house, maybe they're ready to feed you or, give you a full meal that you didn't expect. And I don't think Americans would do that. Maybe your grandma, if you show up, she might, hey, give you some food or maybe a really good friend. But generally, I haven't obviously served a mission in the States, but I would imagine people aren't as welcoming to the missionaries and, they'll just give you all that they have, basically, and that's, basically is just that. That is the food that they were going to eat, or something like that, and they'll give it to you. So they're very willing to give you what they have, and I think that helps with their ability to understand and embrace the gospel. I said that's a very important part of the gospel, to be humble. So that's one thing I really liked about them. I mentioned before how hardworking they are. They're very dedicated workers. They're very dedicated to their families. I think it's a good fit for members of the church, at least, because they emphasize a lot of the same things that we do. They don't show emotion in the same way that we do, or I guess even at all. I don't think I ever really saw Malagasy cry while I was there, whether in church or otherwise. So from our perspective, it kind of seems like standoffish, like they don't want to have any relationship with people, but I don't think that's not the case. They do have good family relationships, but between husband and wife, from an outside perspective, it kind of seemed weird because there was no. It seemed like there were no, tender feelings because there was no interaction like we would expect here between that. So that was interesting. They're pretty friendly if they know you. Like I said, again, missionaries, they're not too fond of sometimes because we're so different. But for the most part, they're pretty nice. At least in terms of helping the missionaries, their members are really good at giving up their time to help the missionaries teach and to teach with the missionaries. I thought that was really helpful. To be in an area where you don't know what's going on, but to have the members with you and support you. They're just good at being friends. I have some, really good friends from some of the wards I served in, and they're just, when you first meet them, you think, wow, you're so different than I am. But then you get used to them and you realize they're just like anybody else. They have the same needs that we do. They want to be loved. They want to be happy. And they don't have as much as we do. And so they go maybe a different route. But I just remember it was really hard for me to come home. It wasn't, it was a culture shock, I guess, going there. But it was really hard for me to come home because of how much we're able to give our kids here, how much we're able to give each other. And it really bothered me when I first came home that, my nieces and nephews, who I love and who are great, were able to be given things that that no kid in Madagascar would ever have. But, it's normal here for us to give our kids toys for their birthdays or whatever, just because we can. And there's nothing wrong with that. But from my perspective, coming home, I was like, man, we have so much that we can give them. And it was just so sad, but also humbling to see the kids who would make a soccer ball out of a bunch of trash bags, like from Walmart or whatever. And they would take a rope or something and then wrap it around all the trash bags, and that would be their soccer ball. And they play with that. But they were totally happy with it. Or kids who would... they would race tires down the street, or tires, or they'd push a tire down the street with a stick, and they'd race each other to see who could get to the end of the street or the path first. And so, though they don't have much, they make a lot of what they don't have. They make a lot out of it, even food-wise. They have very few things for food, but they make incredible meals. And so it taught me a lot about, what's really important from our perspective, because we have so many things here that I think we get caught up in it a lot of the time and forget to be grateful for what we have. But they, very, very grateful for the things that you're willing to give them, give them a tie or a shirt or whatever, just to help them out. And, they'll love you forever because of your willingness to give something up. But, they in return would do just the very same thing for you. So that's one thing I really love about them. They're just so giving and so loving and wonderful. So
there's definitely a big difference in do's and don'ts in Madagascar than here. There's things that they do there that aren't offensive that would be offensive here, and vice versa. One of the biggest examples that I can think of is kind of, they're a little bit more blunt down there with anything, especially like physical features, which here, sometimes we tend to tiptoe around. Like, trying to think of an example. Well, one example is if you're overweight, if you're big, down there they'll let you know, wow, you're big. And here, if you say that, that's kind of rude, but down there it's more of a compliment. It's like, wow, you can say mananaina, you have life. Wow, you have life. It's like, you're not tavi be, you're fat. So it's funny because here it's like, what, like, wow. You get there, wow, you're really white. It's like, yes, thank you, I am, thank you. And to them, like, it's not rude. It's not being rude in their culture. It's just, hey, cool, So that's something that you have to kind of get used to when you get there, and you just have to kind of get it in your mind, like, oh, they're not being rude. They're being friendly. They're being talkative. It's something that they like to talk about. So if you just kind of be open with it and just kind of laugh, and if they say something that offends you, you just kind of laugh it off, shrug it off, be like, yeah. and they're really friendly and they're really easy to talk to, and you can talk to them about pretty much anything, and they just don't get offended with stuff like that, with physical stuff like that. because they're just like, that's how it is. It is how it is. But with that, there are some things. There are some things down there that you know are not acceptable there that are here. If I can try and think of some. They really respect people's property, and like for example, missionaries. You know, we have our backpacks, and we'll set our backpacks down on the floor in front of us as we sit down. A Malagasy person will never step over your backpack because that's your personal property, and they're respecting that. So they'll ask you to move your backpack. When up here, you know, you'll just step over it and not think about it. But they're like, hey, can you move your backpack? And you're like, and then they walk through. So just something like that just you don't really think about, but to them it's a big deal. One thing that's really cool, they really respect like people, and they rarely get in fights with other people. They rarely hurt other people. They're really peaceful, really non-violent, and it's because it's really really bad to hurt someone. I mean, that kind of goes for any culture, but I thought it was amazing that down there, you know, I never really saw any fights, never really saw a whole lot of violence, and you don't really hear about it a lot. I mean, obviously there's exceptions, but they don't really, you know, it's peaceful. No, I've never heard of a missionary getting mugged. My whole mission, and the missionaries before me, and so far to this day, I've never heard of a missionary getting mugged. Pickpocket's a different story. You know, that can happen anywhere. So you got to be careful when you're in crowded places. You know, watch your pockets, watch your backpack. But as for walking around at night, you and your companion, the chances of someone attacking you have slim to none. So that's really nice. And that just goes down to the respect thing. They respect you, and they respect who you are. They really respect missionaries, and they understand that you serve Jesus, and they respect that. For the most part, they think it's awesome that you're down there teaching people and helping people, and they think it's incredibly awesome that someone so far away has come to this country, to their country, learned their language and studied them and tried to understand them. They think it's incredible. They're like, this is awesome. I recently went back to Madagascar a year ago, and just talking to people, they're like, you haven't forgotten the language. They're like, Misocha Matsiaru, which means like, thanks for remembering. I feel like they're kind of in a faraway place, and it's hard to get to, and I think they feel like sometimes they get forgotten. They're just, you know, no one ever learns Malagasy, you know. But then there's this group that comes, and they just learn to love the people, and they learn to love the language, and they just absorb the culture, and the Malagasys are just like, this is awesome. Like, you know, we have friends. Anyways, that's kind of a tangent.